Well, almost all premillennialists believe that there will be a great interruption period before Christ's second coming. Most evangelicals and Pentecostals teach that this interruption period will last for 7 years. Although that number 7 doesn't have to be taken literally always. The word tribulation means great suffering or distress. When will Christ take the church away from the world? Well, at least 3 positions are available amid this question. Pre-tribulationism, post-tribulationalism, and mid-tribulationalism. First, we're going to look at pre-tribulationalism. Well, pre-tribulationism teaches that Christ will remove the church, take away the church secretly and suddenly prior to the 7-year horrific tribulation. And this removal of the church is known as rapture. Hence, the church will escape from this horrific suffering of the Great Tribulation. As you can see in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, after that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So that's the idea of rapture. So we will be with the Lord forever. Only after the rapture and tribulational period, Christ will return to earth with the church. At the end of tribulation, with which the millennial reign of Christ on earth will begin. Next diagram will show you that basically that at the end of the church age, right? You see that we'll experience a rapture, sort of a secret return of Christ only for the believers, right? And we're going to be taken up into the heaven. And in the meantime, for 7 years on earth, there is going to be a great tribulation, great suffering. And at the end of 7-year tribulation, and Christ and the church will come back to reign on earth for 1,000 years, known as millennium. So Christ will take the church out of this world after the tribulational period for 7 years. Someone argued that if you hold on to pre-tribulationism, then actually you are endorsing 3 resurrections. The first resurrection at rapture, all the righteous dead will be resurrected. So there's going to be, at the rapture, all those believers who died before that time, they will be experiencing resurrection at rapture. Actually, there's another rapture if you follow this pre-tribulationalism. That is the resurrection of saints who died during the tribulation. So people who are martyred during that tribulation, they will experience resurrection at the end of that tribulation period. Of course, and then at the end of millennial reign with the Christ, at the end of that millennium, all the unbelievers will be resurrected and they will face God's judgment. So in that sense, someone argued that if you really believe that pre-tribulational ism pre-tribulationalism, then you are talking about basically pre-mill and also not only pre-tribulation, but we call it pre-tribulational, premillennialist. You are basically, they are teaching three resurrections, as you can see on this PowerPoint slide. Of course, church will be exempt from this tribulation, and because we believe that rapture will take place before the tribulation. However, the historic church, right? They believe that church will go through the tribulation. So if you look at 1 Thessalonians 5, chapter 5, verse 9, God did not appoint us to suffer wrath, but to receive salvation through our Lord Jesus Christ. So basically, God will take the church away before the manifestations of God's wrath. That's the sort of idea, undergirding idea of pre-tribulationism. The next one is number 2 view, right? So that is post-tribulationalism. Post-tribulationalists insist that the coming of Christ for his church will not take place until the conclusion of the Great Tribulation. So a post-tribulationalist will argue that the church will go through the 7-year tribulational period. So they do not believe the rapture like pre-tribulationalist. Because it is not biblical expression, according to them, and it also suggests that the church will escape or be delivered from the tribulation, a notion that runs contrary to the essence of post-tribulationism. So if you hold on to this, if you believe this post-tribulationalism, likely that you don't really practice strict literal interpretation of the last times. And so they tend to be less literal than pre-tribulationalist. So in some ways, if you look at Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, he will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. Later on, I'm going to come back to this idea of 7 years. Basically, I guess what I'm saying here is what I want to underscore here is that this post-tribulational view, right, has been in the church history, right, until like 19th and 20th century. This has been the most, I guess, popular and dominant view until the 19th and 20th century. So most historic Christians held to post-tribulationalism, not pre-tribulationalism. Pre-tribulationalism became very popular in the 19th and 20th centuries. During these centuries, most European Christians became very optimistic in believing that they can Christianize the world. So basically, of course, this European optimism was being shattered by World War I and World War II, and especially after World War II, people became much less optimistic about Christianizing the world. But then through the help of dispensationalism and its interpretation of the future in the Bible, pre-tribulationism has become a dominant view, especially among conservatives and evangelicals in our times. Once again, if you are a post-tribulationalist, then you tend to be less literal than pre-tribulationalists. So even the 1,000 years, they don't mean exactly 1,000 years. 7 year does not mean exactly 7 years, because the word, 7 and 1,000, sometimes in the Old Testament, in the Bible, they're used kind of loosely, not really totally literal sense. So it is their argument. Matthew 24, verse 31, and he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So if you look at that, right, and God will gather all the elect. So for us, meaning for evangelical Pentecostals, right, here the elect means the church or believers, right? But if you look at some other interpretation, they will say the elect can also mean the Jewish remnant who later on decide to believe in Jesus Christ as the Messiah. Well, the third view, right, sort of mediated, sort of in-between view, is that is mid-tribulation. The church will go through the first half, 3.5, but then after 3.5 years more of a less painful, peaceful world. And as soon as the second half of tribulation, 7-year period, before that, church will be removed because God loves his church and he wants to ensure that they are exempt from this horrific 7-year tribulation. So church will avoid this horrible, horrific wrath of God during the second half of the tribulation. All right, so most Pentecostals, including Assemblies of God, we confess or we believe pre-tribulationalism or pre-tribulationism or pre-tribulationalism. Some people, they add AL before ism. So if you look at Revelation chapter 20, verse, if you really read through that, you're going to say Revelation chapter 6 to 19 describes the period of great tribulation. And then Revelation chapter 20, right? And you will see the end of the Great Tribulation and beginning of a millennium, 1,000-year reign with Christ. Once again, Matthew chapter 24, verse 31, and he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So then the theological question will be, who are the elect? And then do these elect go through the tribulation, or they'll be exempt from this tribulation? Once again, for many evangelical Pentecostal interpretation of the elect, the word elect refers to the believers, right? But then there are some people argue that over there, especially the book of Revelation, it is more of a remnant or elected Jews too. So the argument for the pre-tribulation is that God loves his church so much. Why would let God, his beloved children, the church, will go through this great suffering? So God will make sure they escape from or take away these faithful Christians before the beginning of the 7-year horrific tribulation. And it is their argument. Now, sometimes there are so many people ask me, like, literally, are we talking about exactly 7 years of tribulation? What if it is 6 years? What if it's 10 years? That kind of question. Why can't it be 10 years? What can it be 20 years? Where did you get that idea? It's going to be a 7 year of tribulation. For that, most people actually, they are using Revelation 12:6 or Daniel chapter 9:27. So, yeah, I mean, chapter 9, especially, book of Daniel chapter 9, right? And also, as I mentioned, Revelation chapter 12, verse 6. If you look at Revelation chapter 12, verse 6, the woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care for 1,260 days. So basically, church will be escaping this, especially the horrible 3.5 years, the second half of the tribulation. The other verse that often quoted to say that literally it's going to be 7 year tribulation. They are quoting from book of Daniel chapter 9 verse 27. So how do you know whether it's going to be 7 years or 10 years or 6 years of the Great Tribulation? If you look at Daniel chapter 9 verse 27, right? You will see that number 7, the 7 year will appear that. However, book of Daniel chapter 9 is very interesting, certainly raising many critical questions. Because if you look at book of Daniel chapter 9 verse 2, right? Here, prophet Jeremiah spoke of the desolation of Jerusalem will last 70 years. So from around 587 BC, right? And then, it was King Cyrus, right? 537 years, like about 7 years. Basically, he is saying that Jewish people can, at least some of them can go back to their homeland and start building the temple there. So Jeremiah in Jeremiah chapter 29 verse 10, and basically spoke of 70 years, and then basically they will come back and rebuild the temple, right? However, book of Daniel, right? The author of book of Daniel did not agree with that, because he wanted to include the abomination done by Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. So instead of 70 years, he's now talking about 70 weeks of years. So what do you mean by 70 weeks of year? A week of a year is 7 years, right? A week of years is 7 years. So 70 weeks of year, basically it's 490 years. 7 times 70. 70 weeks. 7 times 70. In Daniel chapter 9, verse 20 and 24, Angel Gabriel appeared with an oracle, which interpreted Jeremiah's prophecy as not as the 70 years, right? It's the 70 weeks of years. So, now, with that interpretation, the author of Anchor's Bible Commentary, right, Louis Hartman, insists that in Daniel chapter 9, verse 27, portrayed the already foresaw the persecution of Antiochus IV, Epiphanes. So basically, for him, that the author of the book of Daniel, right, basically that he foresaw these abomination done by Epiphanes in 169 BC, or sometimes some scholars believe that there's some divided interpretation, 169 BC or 167 BC, the abomination that he basically ended the sacrifice to Yahweh in the temple in Jerusalem, and because he set up the statue of Zeus, Olympias, God, in the middle of that temple. And then basically he initially he made a 171 BC, he made a covenant with renegade Jews, like somebody, they're sort of a betraying sort of Jewish heritage, right? They who compromised their beliefs somewhat, and he made a sort of a peaceful covenant with them, but after 3.5 years, he ended that covenant, and basically with the abomination, he ended the Jewish worship of Yahweh. The sacrifice done to Yahweh, he basically made sure the Jewish people do not worship Yahweh in that temple anymore. So that was the ending of offering sacrifices done at the Jewish temple. Yeah. So that over there, you see the 7 years of tribulation, abomination, and the end of Jewish worship of Yahweh in their temple. So the number 7, now you got some idea, right? It's just basically they got it from book of Daniel, especially a lot of 70 weeks and 70 years and 7 times 70 times 7. All the number 7, you'll see that basically already there in the book of Daniel. Now I want to go back to there's a typo. It's Matthew 24. 15, right? I don't think it's 25:15. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel. I just talked about chapter 9, verse 27. Let the reader understand. So once again, that great tribulation, right? That idea of great tribulation in the 7-year period, right, goes back to the book of Daniel's. And actually, in more or less, most scholars that I know, they will say that the Daniel's prophecy in chapter 9 was fulfilled. That abomination of desolation performed by Epiphanes in what year was it? 169 or 67. So that from many Old Testament scholars, right? Even Hebrew scholars, they will say that prophecy was fulfilled 169 or 67 BC. So, but then you see that already in that sort of should I say the earlier Great Tribulation, and you see that was fulfilled already. It lasted for 7 years. So in some ways, there were many abominations if you look at human history, right? So we just saw that in Daniel chapter 9, right? Abomination of desolation in why do I keep saying in 167 BC, BC in 167 by Antiochus IV Epiphanes. And then basically because he did a lot of things that should not be performed in the temple, like sprinkling like pig's blood, swine's blood, and sprinkling that all over the temple. That should not have been done. So that was the abomination done by Epiphanes. Once again, however, though, we see another abomination in AD 70, right? In a sense, a lot of Jewish or New Testament scholars would argue that Jesus Christ made a prophecy about none of the stone of the temple will, stay on another stone, and that is fulfilled in AD 70. In that way, there's also the second, at least the abomination that I can see in the church history, and I'm not the only one. And then we Christians, right? There's also future for us, eschatological, global, in a sort of much larger, greater global scale abomination will happen in the future. So in that sense, there will be many, or there has been many abominations. And that goes against my, one of my lecture in previous module, right? There's this, process, eschatological interpretation. It is more organic, and it's like happening again and again. But then we have not seen the final pinnacle, consummation of that yet. Yeah, so the Great Tribulation, we looked at again, also Matthew 24, verse 21, for then there will be great distress. Now, in some ways, unequal from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equally done. Many Jewish, people actually, or should I say Jewish Christians even, or even early Christians, they believe that Jesus Christ's prophecy, right? When he spoke about in Matthew 24, Olivet prophecies were fulfilled in AD 70. However, for Christians today, right, for us, we're still waiting for this in a much greater sort of a global scale of this great tribulation that is going to happen for us in the future. So that is one interpretation of it. And if you look at, once again, Matthew 24, 22, if those days had not been cut short, no one would survive. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. So in a sense that, once again, that talking about the Great Tribulation period, Great Tribulational period for 7 years, and in some ways, for many pre-tribulationists, they will use this verse to say that God will make sure that He takes out the elect and make sure that church will not go through this horrific 7-year tribulation. Well, then who are the elect, right? So once again, we have a divided, trust me, I've read like several commentaries on this too. Scholars are divided, but for most evangelical Christian church, right, the elect means the faithful Christians, the church, the faithful church. All right, that's it for now, and I'm going to stop here, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.